daily, and they were able to tell us about Jewish holidays here and there. But after leaving Auschwitz, we simply lost track of Jewish holidays, and maybe there were some who knew about the Jewish holiday approaching. I mean, we knew definitely the months, yeah, and we knew, for example, that in September there'll be Rosh Hashanah, New Year's, and Day of Atonement in Sukkot. But otherwise, we lost completely track of the specific days when the Jewish holidays did take place. After the first 2 months, in the meantime, a new camp was constructed for our group to be moved over to the new camp, which was only about half a mile away from the old one in Günthergrube. Lengen and Günthergrube were the same place. Lengen was the name of the town before the war, and the mine in itself was called in German Günthergrube. Grube is a mine.
And when did you leave this Günthergrube camp? You arrived there in September '44.
I have to maybe mention one specific point that took place in Günthergrube, which was again the appels, the daily appels, and specifically on one Sunday appel. I happened to have been in the washroom and washing my shirt there whilst the appel took place. I wasn't aware of it because the water was running and I couldn't hear that they announced and here they were standing outside trying to count the people, and one person was missing. They were looking for him. They sent out the SS all over to look, and it didn't occur to anyone that someone could be in the washroom. When I finished washing my shirt, I walked out, not knowing what was taking place. They were standing about 45 minutes to an hour just waiting for this person to be found. It is indescribable whatever took place at this moment. The SS in charge of counting us, he right away pulled out his pistol in order to shoot me on the spot. Somehow he may have had the Almighty watched over me. He may have had a change of heart, and he gave me a few beatings with his whip in his hand, and he ordered me to join the line. Himself being alleviated a little bit because he didn't lose, because he would have had to give account if someone would have been missing from the group. We continued to work in Günthergrube until the evacuation from Günthergrube, January the 18th, 1945, where Auschwitz was evacuated the very same day, and so were all the adjacent concentration camps surrounding Auschwitz. We definitely heard days beforehand the planes flying above us, and we hoped very much that here our salvation will come, but unfortunately they were able to gather us this same day, and we put us in 5 in a column. At 10 o'clock in the evening they ordered us to start marching. Here I have a article that I wrote about this, which we called, not we called, it was called the Death March from Günthergrube until we arrived a Sunday later. We arrived walking for quite a few days in Gleiwitz, which was also in Upper Silesia, to be sent away, transported to Oranienburg. Now, if I may, I would like to read part of an article that I wrote, which was published this past February in the Jewish Standard here in Bergen County in New Jersey. I will start somewhere in the middle, and I hope I won't distract the cameraman with my reading. The journey started in Lengen, Günthergrube, one of the many concentration camps in the vicinity of Auschwitz. It was early in 1945. The Russian armies were approaching, and the precious treasure, in quotes, the tortured Jewish prisoners, had to be evacuated to prevent them from being captured by the enemy. On the 18th of January and during the days immediately before, a faint whiff of freedom had been in the air. News of German defeats had leaked into the camp, and the sound of artillery coming closer lifted our hopes. The fateful announcement, however, came at 6 in the evening. Everybody must be ready to leave the camp later that night. All illusion of freedom vanished. All were gripped by fear. Even those to whom the daily portion of bread had become more important than life itself were suddenly aware of the hammering hearts and felt, along with the rest of us, that the end had come. Supplied only with the next day's ration, about 12 ounces of bread, we gathered in front of the barracks for final instructions before departure. At 10 p.m. sharp, of shadows, more than 3,000 left the camp. A blizzard of snow and hail accompanied us on the first few miles of our journey, and the mounting snow made walking more difficult with each mile. Some of the more daring tried to escape, and did, jumping into the ditch on either side of the road and burying themselves deep in snow. Others were not so lucky. Bullets from the guards' rifles struck them down before the white snow could cover their dark, tattered garments. I had been carrying the suitcase of one of the SS officers with the help of a friend of mine on the right. Apparently in appreciation, the devil suggested that I could hand over the suitcase to the next fellow and escape. Being a little suspicious and not yet prepared to depart this life, I declined the generous offer, but my friend accepted it eagerly. The officer kept his and let the man jump into the ditch unharmed. The next one to try, however, a close friend of mine from childhood, barely had time to fling himself into the ditch before the very same man who only minutes earlier had offered me freedom made him the target of 3 bullets from his gun. More than 500 people were either shot or disappeared during the first night. Of those who managed to escape unharmed, only a few survived, most of them either froze to death or died from hunger in those last hours as they awaited freedom. Next morning we were crowded into a bombed-out brick factory to give the guards a chance to rest. Among the ruins we met prisoners from neighboring concentration camps who had also been evacuated the night before. We appreciated the rest too. That afternoon we were on the move again. Our guards were now supplied with bicycles, horses, carts and the like, and they kept us on the march until nightfall of the next day. Many people dropped out and died on the road, some from cold and hunger, some from exhaustion. Thus we were driven for 40 miles like a herd of beasts without food or water, till we reached the town of Gleiwitz, once famous for its many industries and 4 concentration camps, now half deserted. The old residents were recently gone from the camps, and Gleiwitz too, located near the upper railway station, opened its gates once more to receive the exhausted, hungry and miserable human herd. Anxious for a place to rest, we found only half demolished barracks and barely enough room to provide shelter from the biting frost outside. Those still able to walk tried to locate some food and water. The lucky ones were the first to reach the kitchen. They found packs of ersatz, coffee, flour and some potatoes, but not nearly enough to satisfy the despairing stomachs of the thousands of hungry walking dead who swarmed through the camp. Nevertheless, we managed to prepare enough hot coffee to warm up our frozen, weary bodies. In the early morning of the following day, a long train with open cars, used to transport coal, was seen pulling into the station. We tried to fool ourselves that it could not possibly be meant for human beings. We were not lumps of coal after all, and the temperature was 25 degrees centigrade below zero. We prayed that they would not have a chance to take us further, for the Russians could only be a few miles away. But we soon had a rude awakening from our dreams. At noon, we were moved from the camp towards the station, for evacuation to the west. What seemed like hundreds of enemy planes, in quotes,